Hi friends, Glenn here from Alter Egos. Bit of housekeeping before we start this week's episode. I just wanted to say a huge thank you from myself and Joey to those that have listened throughout the year. We're getting close to the end of the year and we're going to be wrapping up very shortly. Between both this episode and our last two episodes taking place around Hawkeye and Spider-Woman, we'll be signing this year off with sort of the Rise of Red Skull and closing that product out, and really coming back strong in January with a fresh start, some outstanding packs to review, and hopefully some more broader discussions and interviews. This experience with the campaign books has been fun, and we really enjoyed talking in depth about it, but we also do know that we want to get back to talking a bit more widely, a bit more broadly about the meta, about the game, and the experiences you can have. And yeah, it's been a blast to share this journey with everyone in 2020. I'm actually moving very shortly, and so there is going to be content next week on the, I'm going to say 16th, and content on the 23rd. But for the 30th and the 6th, I'm pretty sure those 2 weeks will probably be a gap, just because I'm moving, starting a new job, and in that period, I just don't think I'm going to be able to find time to get the podcast back up and running until the following week. I just want to spend a second to say a huge thank you to those that supported the show via Patreon. We've got enough now to really keep this show going through the entirety of 2021. And I'm actually going to turn off the Patreon for a bit. I think what I want to do instead is perhaps just once a year set up a donation window, and for those that wish to help contribute to the running costs and time to sink into editing and such forth, they can do so. For those of you that have supported monthly and really give us this initial leg up, thank you so much to all of you who decided to help in that way. It really does mean a lot that there's those of you in the community that have wanted to support us and believe in what we're trying to do here down under for the game. We've got some good ideas and big plans for 2021, and we're really hoping that this podcast continues to move in a positive direction. We hope that you've enjoyed what's been on offer. I will say that you should probably look out for a brief Google form if you're interested to provide feedback over your experience with the show in 2020. It's been a blast for myself, but I'm always looking to work on things and improve on them. And so if you feel like there's some elements that are weaker than others or things that you're not enjoying while listening, please put those in the feedback forms and we'll look at what we can do realistically to address those moving forward. Just want to end with a huge thanks, and I hope you enjoy this final segment of our Rise of Red Skull box. It'd be really helpful if after this, if you enjoyed listening to our content, or if you just wanted to provide some really honest feedback via the podcast platform of choice, do feel free to leave us a review. It really helps in us being present and those in the community becoming more aware that there is a podcast from Australia about Marvel Champions. And so I'd really appreciate everyone's honest feedback on that. But more importantly, I hope you guys just enjoy the discussion around Red Skull in this week, and in the following weeks we will have Hawkeye and Spider-Woman. Thank you for your patience during this time. I know it's been a bit shaky of recent, but looking forward to what 2021 has to offer, and I really hope you guys enjoyed 2020 for Marvel Champions, even if other things were obviously out of control this year. So thank you guys, and enjoy the episode. Welcome back, everyone, to Alter Egos, a Marvel Champions podcast by Fantasy Flights Games. I'm your host, Glenn, and with me this week, as always, is in the co-pilot seat, Joey. Joey, how is it going this week?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm great, actually. You're only good because Ant-Man has been delayed, and so there's a little bit of a bit of sadness in the air, so to speak. I'm in the same boat as you, but I'm just trying to explore other games like Lord of the Rings and Arkham. So yeah, I've had a good week, but we're actually here to talk about the Rise of Red Skull campaign, and this is our final episode. We've over the course of, I guess, 2 months, kind of had some discussions about, Crossbones, and then to, Absorbing Man and Taskmaster. And Zola should have been out the week before this goes live. And we've reached the end of the road and the end of a journey. And I've actually played this scenario quite a bit, and I think you have also. And that is the big bad of the box, Red Skull himself. What are your first impressions of this particular scenario, Joey?
Well, the first couple of times I went through it as a campaign, and the thing that really came to me is that there's no this whole box has it, but the Red Skull in particular, as the big bad, has no way to slow you down. And in expert, what's that? 36 hit points per player, which in solo is 36 hit points. So it's kind of easy to just rush it out really quickly. And initially I thought that was a bit of a flaw because the first time I went through, I didn't I took the recovery upgrade. I completely forgot that that I upgraded it and didn't flip over the card for the final stage. I used my tech upgrade in the round before, and I got none of the allies from Taskmaster's campaign. So I had everything going wrong, and I still beat it I still beat it easily within only a few turns because he's super weak to being rushed. And that I thought was interesting, and I thought that was actually a problem because then I did it a second time, and that happened again. Although this time I had much better campaign stuff going on. But then eventually I came back to it and I tried it with a very slow deck. I tried it with, I think it was a Spider Woman Protection Justice deck, which you may note that those two aspects are ones that are considered to be a little bit slower on average. And it was so hard to beat Red Skull because he really does just you just get so many side schemes. There is a point where you cannot handle the side schemes that are coming out turn to turn, and you will. And once you let one go one turn, and then the turn later you've got two, and then you normally can't get it below that. It's always going to be two going forward, and so it really gets out of hand really quickly. Which means that I actually think this rush shenanigans that he's got going on with him, where he's super weak to rushing, is actually a really good design, because if he didn't have it, this would probably be almost impossible with the current card pool. If he was 32 and 40 or something insane, where your HPs are just really ballooned out. So the way it is really good. I did find it interesting that he grabs all the side schemes out of the modular sets you include as well. So any modular set that includes a particularly nasty side scheme, say Legions of Hydra or Doomsday Chair, they come out a lot. You will very quickly find them, and there's nothing you can really do about it in Red Skull. Whereas if you have a not particularly threatening side scheme, what's the one in Bomb Scare? Is it just called Bomb Scare? Whatever the side scheme in Bomb Scare is, it might just be called Bomb Scare. That's just basically a free turn. Although I do also kind of like that some of these side schemes are positive when you remove them. I've had some fun with the prison camps grabbing an ally out of my deck.
Yeah, I think there's a good balance there of offering replayability via the different modular sets giving you a unique experience each time, and then some of the positives that can come from the experience. I also think you're bang on the fact that this scenario kind of teaches you a slightly different way to approach the game, in that what previously you might prioritize like ramp, and by that I mean like committing cards to the table that will give you value over the course of the game. So an example is like Helicarrier, Avengers Mansion, the types of cards that come in the signature sets that offer additional resources. You can still play maybe one of those, but ultimately you might learn through trial and error that a better approach might be to play that 3 cost event that deals 6 to 8 damage, and just start trying to chip Red Skull down and get to the end before things get a bit out of hand. I also agree with you about the side schemes, and I think there is a reason why they give you the Justice Spider-Man in the precons. I think it's quite helpful to have a Justice ally that can delete a side scheme at will, as a way to flexibly slot it in if you're playing standard campaign. And I think there's a nice balance of like the end result of a journey through the previous 4 scenarios. Like you said, there's the classic thing of you've got the upgrade card that you forget to flip over to the upgraded side. You might forget to do the result for having the minion in the previous scenario. There's a lot of small things that you may forget to do, which might alter your experience. And finally, I think overall I quite like that this villain does have that lower health pool, just because it doesn't outstay its welcome. Like, you can have the side schemes like pile up a little bit, and you start taking a bit more damage, and there's like more nasty effects. But at the end of it all, you can just say as a group, let's just go for it. Let's just try and take him out before things get too out of hand. The danger there is that obviously there's the red room, which starts in play. The
red house.
Yeah. And so like you've got to contend with the idea that over the course of the game that might pop up more than once. And because it's set at 3 per player, you have to find creative solutions to clear it occasionally, because you don't have the ability to thwart for 3 just with a hero, unless you're She-Hulk or Hulk, I guess, because of the interrupt.
You can also do it with Thor. You just play Mjolnir down.
Yeah, if Thor's got his hammer down, he certainly can. I quite like that this is a villain that also has the Hydra trait, and so you get a bit more experimentation with the Hydra sets that came in the box. But certainly, like you sort of hinted at, if you put Legions of Hydra in this set, you're in for a really tricky time, because that side scheme's going to come out a lot more consistently in the early game. And as a consequence of that, you've got to contend with both I think, minimum 7 threat Legions of Hydra.
Theoretically, you could get 5 with if Madam Hydra was on the table somewhere but not revealed yet.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so you could get 5, but often you get 7, and then you've also got to deal with Madam Hydra early on. And so, it kind of forces you for a different deck build almost. Did you ever alter your deck for this scenario, or did you kind of just change your play pattern and that was enough to succeed?
I haven't altered a deck for this scenario. I have my first attempt at this without doing campaign was a particularly strong deck and worked quite well. And I did have Legions of Hydra in as a modular set. But that was a really close game, despite being a really strong deck that it had already taken out Mutagen with ease before that. The only thing that has come up is at one point I was making a deck that I wasn't sure if it was going to work. I actually think it ended up not working, even when I tried it on easier scenarios. But I randomized the scenario and rolled Red Skull, and I got flattened, and it took like 2 hours each time I tried it, because the deck that I was building was not worth talking about. I don't even remember what it was, but it was some weird shenanigan that just straight up didn't work. And if I had tested that against something other than. So I just gave up on this on trying to beat Red Skull with it, and went back to trying to play against something simpler to test it, because turns out Red Skull is kind of hard. I probably shouldn't be testing unproven, unknown deck styles against it.
Yeah, I guess we probably should clarify that I actually think this is one of the hardest scenarios presented to us so far. We're obviously recording this a bit later than when the product came out, and so we also have Kang as a comparison point. And yeah, I find Red Skull to be up there with the challenge, particularly if you do add some of those module sets either from the core set, such as Doomsday Chair or Legions of Hydra, or if you decide to add the slightly more difficult ones from the Kang scenario pack. Yeah, this guy's actually really hard, and I think part of it is that the scenario doesn't really front load or back load the difficulty. It's just a very consistent degree of challenge where each draw from the encounter deck can be problematic, and this side scheme reveal at some point is going to become a bit too much for the players at hand. I think it's pretty hard to maintain consistent control over the side scheme deck, which is fun because you want this villain to be doing his schemes. That's part of the narrative, is that it is the rise of Red Skull and you need to stop him ascending to the New World Hydra. So yeah, I think it works quite well.
Yeah, I actually really like another thing to note. It's a little bit front loaded because of the when revealed trigger, to deal each player an encounter card. So it's like slightly more at the start, but like unlike Mutagen, because it's only one encounter card, it's not like you don't end up in that situation where you want to keep him on stage 2 until you can do 20 damage per player, which is achievable. There's very few combinations that can't achieve that particular number, and the just because it's only one encounter card, I feel not safe, but okay to flip him to his third stage, as opposed to when I'm playing Mutagen formula, because he's getting so many of those cards. If I never feel safe flipping Mutagen. I typically do not flip Mutagen unless I can defeat the third stage on the same turn, because it's just there's too much variability and it's too easy to lose. Whereas this seems like a better middle ground. I think Taskmaster had the same mechanic there as well, but this is a harder scenario, so it feels more comparable to Mutagen to me.
Yeah, and then obviously, like, once you start to learn the scenario, there's things like, that at some point the Sleeper Awakens is going to come up. And so, having a minion that's going to come out that has high health, retaliate, toughness, and guard to, like, stop you advancing that win condition that you're talking about is an interesting thing that you need to plan for as a group. And like you've said previously, I also like that there's things like prison camps and Hydra reinforcements that kind of reward you for investing in, defeating those side schemes, and kind of give you sort of mini objectives as they randomly show up in a random pattern throughout the experience. And I guess finally it's nice that there's the additional effects of Sense of the Past, which, disrupts you slightly by, giving you an acceleration token that you may choose to leave on the board. But the interesting part of Red Skull is if you leave a acceleration token on the board via a side scheme, you're actually increasing his attack. So there's that additional factor you have to consider. I guess one interesting dynamic of this is that if you draw Master Plan, you can whiff on it, which I found kind of funny for expert mode.
Master Plan will always put you could have only the Sleeper Awakens as the only side scheme and just put 4 threat on it, which does nothing.
Yeah, I can't remember what the ruling is for dashes, but yeah, I guess also, like, let's say you played what's that card? You'll pay for that. Like, you could clear the side scheme that came out the turn, right? And then you could draw Master Plan. But it's like a niche case. But I just think it's interesting that there's, like, cards have a new light that you've been playing with for a long time now. And similarly, there's modular sets that have interesting side schemes that now can, have a rejuvenated experience by, you can go to this scenario anytime a very unique or engaging side scheme comes out, in the product line, and have a very fulfilling experience.
The hazard icons in this particular scenario also are so mean. Just like you flip up your hazard icon. Normally it would be a full turn before it matters, but nah, if you don't have you'll pay for that, because you'll pay for that is actually really good in this scenario. If you don't have you'll pay for that in hand at this exact moment, you're going to draw an extra card this turn, and that can mess you up.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I didn't notice really until now is that I kind of like the design of this, the encounter deck. It doesn't actually, they didn't design a card that actually draws an additional card from the side scheme deck. Like instead, they kind of complemented the fact that you have side schemes in play, which I kind of like from a design perspective, because it means you can balance and keep, the control point being that there's one side scheme coming out per turn rather than creating, having that variability where you could have one come out and then three come out. So yeah, I think they did a really good job of keeping this experience rather tight. And this character does feel like Red Skull. Even if you kill him fast, it definitely feels like he's been scheming for a while before you get there.
I could agree with that.
Yeah, so I guess there's just a few cards we should probably cover from the encounter set. I thought a really interesting minion that they introduced was Hydro Exo Soldier. He has 5 HP, toughness, 2 scheme, 2 attack, the Hydro trait with the boost ability, give the villain a tough status card, and another boost card. What was your experience with a 5 HP minion, Joey, that has toughness? And where do you think this minion sits on the power level that we've seen so far?
There's very few non-elite minions in this set, or in most modular sets. So I think this is the only minion that I've actually managed to kill with Hydra reinforcements, which I'm pretty sure I've only had go off like once in 10 games or something. So I don't actually think I've actually dealt with this. I think I've maybe once it came up on like the final turn. Once I've killed it with that. Once I just left it in play, because 2/2 is not sustainable long term, but if you're going to win in like 1 or 2 turns, it's not going to be that big a deal.
Yeah, I've certainly treated it like it's similar to Modok, I found, in that you can maybe weather it 1 or 2 turns, but you ultimately need to find a solution for it if you're not going to close out the game fast enough.
Yeah, 5 is also an interesting number for killing things. Most of your hero cards, if you have a hero card that deals damage, you can probably deal 5. Toughness is a pain though. Currently, we don't have a lot of piercing just yet. The main way would be the vibranium arrows from Hawkeye. But if you want a free attack character, you could like Black Knight into 3 damage attack. Although I suppose Black Knight and Wonder Man could deal with this as well if you're focusing on high attack leadership allies. Which, if you are, those would be 2 good picks anyway. And obviously in aggression, there's a bunch of ways you could deal with it. If you've got a free attack character, you've got your skilled strikes. If you're playing Black Panther, you've got your mean swings. If you're playing someone else, you've got your relentless assaults, and you don't even have to bother finding a fist icon because it's got 5 hit points. It's not going to get overkill anyway.
Yeah, you just need to find a way to clear the toughness first, which I kind of like, because sometimes you have to commit your hero's basic attack to it to clear the toughness, and then that gives up some thwarting potential if, say, you're a 2/2/2 hero, which I thought was interesting.
2/2 heroes in this particular scenario are kind of awkward when it comes to if you're not playing Justice, because so many of these are 3 per player.
Yeah, and I thought that was a very intentional decision where you kind of had to find an additional resource, whether it be something in your hand or an ally, or an event to kind of address the side schemes. Also in multiplayer, the Justice player that's running heroic intuitions all of a sudden becomes your best friend, because I think that can help quite a bit where everyone's kind of hitting the right tempo point for clearing, side schemes or the main scheme threat in efficient ways.
Yeah, assuming you don't have like an Iron Man or a Captain America player can do pretty well on this too. They're both characters that can ready consistently turn to turn while having decent fort values.
Yeah. I also found it interesting that this encounter set has a lot of attachments. So, not only is there the unique one of the Red Skull's Luger, but there's also 2 Master Strategists, 2 Twisted Reality, and 2 Red Skull's Right Hook that all kind of either complement the side scheme mechanic by boosting the amount of boost cards or giving a punishment for defeating the side schemes. Twisted Reality is pretty nasty because it not only puts a threat on the main scheme, but also forces you to deal an additional encounter card to the first player.
It's really nice if you happen to have the Sleeper Awakens side scheme out. You can just put it on there and never have to deal with it.
Yeah, that is definitely a very nice play for the heroes. So, it's like similar to the Red Skull's Luger and then the Red Skull's Right Hook, along with the experimental weapons from the campaign, create a rather vast amount of attachments that are in the deck that can really block you up if you can't kind of clear through them.
Yeah, if you have all the experimentals in the deck as well, you can get to like retaliate free with ranged piercing, and a base scheme value of 5, and a base attack of like, what is that, 4 in stage 3, 3 in stage 2, and that's plus however many schemes you got in it. So it's like 4 to 4 at stage 2, 5 at stage 3, and then minimum. And then you start getting more if things are starting to get out of hand. And like taking a 6-7 damage hit before boost is kind of hard.
Yeah, particularly if you think about it, 4-player, where you're going to draw 4 cards minimum for the first, during the encounter phase. And in the first turn, you're all going to reveal 8 cards minimum from the deck. Like these cards are going to come out hard and fast, and you need to find answers to them. But again, aside from the retaliate, like you said, it's kind of like incentivizing. Do you commit your resources to the long game of trying to out control this villain, or is he really the master strategist, and you kind of need to put him in his place by just beating him to a pulp?
One thing I will say though, I'm still not convinced that the experimental weapons are actually a downside in these decks. I think it's you want the experimental weapons in there when you're playing the campaign, because you would rather draw an experimental weapon over one of these Red Skull cards.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've played this standalone a bit more than I have campaign now, and you certainly notice a difference when those cards are no longer in your deck. It creates a very challenging experience, and I kind of like that there's that sort of range of ability, to play this scenario and engage with it in different ways. We should probably just quickly cover Bitter Rival. I thought this was actually a very interesting card to design, where if you do, as the player group, decide to leave the side schemes in play, that the punishment of this card being drawn can really disrupt your overall tempo for the game. What do you think about this sort of treachery being in the game, Joey, and how does it make you feel when you draw it?
Well, my bitter rival is Sonic Boom, and this is a very similar card. So yeah, it can just be like my second rival. I'm sick of being exhausted all the time.
For the listeners, I think they're familiar with the woes of a She-Hulk player, as I like to call it. In other games, back in L5R, we used to call it the Cry of Doom, but for you, it's the the exhaust on the 3 attack heroes that
Just
really
every time
makes you sad.
It's a little bit better now with Red Skull because of the Earth's Mightiest Heroes, but I'm pretty sure I had my Thor Earth's Mightiest Heroes reset deck come up against Red Skull, and I'm pretty sure I got hit by this, and it wasn't the worst because I had one in hand, but I've lost 3 damage. I've lost 3 damage that turn, and it doesn't feel good ever. But you're always exhausting your character. You're pretty much always gonna be exhausting at least one, and it might as well just say exhaust your board after a little while.
Yeah. This card, I think, really exemplifies my experience in this scenario because not only is the artwork on point, I just love the flavor text of "This is the end for you, her captain." Like it's a really, I think it's a really iconic sort of card to sell you on this scenario. And I always think about like if I was introducing this game to a newer player, not that I'd play the scenario first, but I think it can really encapsulate sort of a really strong hero versus villain experience. And that's something I've thought about a bit more about these sort of final bosses, is that they really often do encapsulate that final struggle for the heroes to overcome a unique set of experiences to, win not only the scenario but the campaign. And these sort of cards really sell me on that because like this card really disrupts the player's game plan. But when you talk about the game afterwards, you're like, man, like we played around that bitter rival, or like when Spider-Man cancelled the bitter rival, it got us through. I think there's some really interesting moments that can come from interacting with these sorts of cards.
Speaking of individual cards, I actually would like to bring up Spreading Lies. It's just when revealed, place 2 threat on each scheming play. It's got a boost for giving Red Skull a tough status token, but that's not a big deal. And it also has 1 boost icon. The reason I want to bring it up is, as I've been saying, there's almost always one side scheme that you'll pay for that to not have one.
Yeah, we can just say 98% of the time, or 99% of the time, there's a side scheme in play. Yeah.
Yeah. The Spreading Lies is that card that pushes it so that it's just slightly too much for you to handle that turn. Sometimes it's not always, and it's obviously less if you're playing solo. But all of a sudden, all these 3s become 5s, and if you're there's a lot of cards that do 2 frauds. Like there's to the rescue, most allies. Your hero has a maximum of 2 fraud, unless you're playing Justice, or Captain America. There's very few that can consistently remove 5. The only characters I can think of that can consistently remove 5 would be She-Hulk and Iron Man. And even then, like that would have to be for She-Hulk, would have to be super late game because you need everything set up. And if this 2 causes that to stick around, and all of a sudden you've got 2 and you're a turn behind, and yeah, it all starts falling apart. So this 1 card, I think, actually is what causes the game to fall apart on you. I feel most of the time. I feel like that's the card that's going to cause it out of all these cards in here. So there's only 2 copies of it, but you're getting more and more cards every turn. The longer you wait, the closer you're getting to a Spreading Lies that's going to actually mess you up.
Yeah.
Although once you give up on them, once you give up on the side schemes, it does nothing. But
well, it does actually advance the main scheme. And I was going to just comment that between Insight on the Twisted Realities and the Hydra Soldiers, I'm going to call them Hydra Regulars. Sorry. There's 6 cards that can potentially out of nowhere spike you to the next main scheme. So often I've found in this game, depending on how many delay counters you have, particularly in campaign, this is 4, you can sometimes, be really under the pump to controlling the main scheme tempo because you don't want it to flip to the second side because it gives you another side scheme to deal with. And the combination of Insight and then Spreading Lies really adds that tension throughout the experience where you may not be able to control the threat, and Red Skull may advance to the new world of Hydra. And I thought that was a pretty strong, thematic way to really showcase that, this guy is in control and you're going to have to, Yeah, you basically at the end of the day, you kind of have to make the decision that you're going to beat this guy up. Even if you're a pacifist, it's like the only way forward. You can't out invest this guy. You need to bring some damage and bring him down a peg through violence, which is usually not condoned. I think those are our main thoughts on Red Skull. Did you have any thoughts about the modular set experience, Joey? Is there a particular modular set combination that's given you trouble?
Oh, the Legions of Hydra is definitely, I think, is like, it's already, I would consider it like the hardest modular set just in general. But in this particular scenario, it's just mean. It combos so well with Red Skull, and Madam Hydra just is a permanent fixture. It might as well just be an attachment to Red Skull that gives +2 scheme, +2 attack. Except for the fact that you can hit it with Spider-Woman. Not Spider-Woman, Spider-Girl. The other one, the aggression ally.
Yes,
other than that, I don't think there's anything that's been particularly problematic that I've tried. Although, it did amuse me with, I think it's the temporal modular set from from the Kang pack. The side scheme is basically nothing. It actually made it a lot easier to have the temporal thing. But it comes out, it's got like two threat on it and an acceleration token. It's nothing to deal with, even relative to the ones that are already here. And then once you get rid of it, because it has a when defeated text, that when defeated text goes off, and then it shuffles into the deck. So you end up with a side scheme in the deck, and somewhere down the line you're going to have a 2 side scheme turn, maybe, unless it gets used as a boost card. And that was an interesting experience because I was actually worried about that card for the first time ever. Because I could now get double side scheme from Red Skull. And
it sounds like you're at the ice cream shop and you're like, I'd like to order a double, please. Like you're just waiting for that really bad moment. Which side scheme has the temporal trait? Is it?
No, it's temporal. It's the temporal. It's in Kang. It's the temporal modular set. It has a side scheme that I cannot remember the name of because I haven't played
Time Portal. I see what you're saying. It has the force interrupts, so that it shuffles into the encounter deck. Yeah, that's wild. That's a cool sort of interaction. Yeah, I think those like little small things really, you kind of notice them more when you put them in these sort of unique situations. And as fun as finding player interactions that are engaging, I am constantly enjoying finding those little things that make the encounter set really go off between a modular set card and an encounter card that you may not think works at once, but kind of really alters your experience of it.
And it looks like Time Portal has a hazard icon, not an acceleration, which makes it even worse because hazard icons in Red Skull are basically, they might as well have Surge on them.
Yeah, that's like I think a good positive. It kind of showcased how you can be punished by hazard icons because unlike the normal experience where you draw one with a hazard icon and in solo you often can prioritize clearing it the following turn. Here you not only have that pressure to deal with it the following turn, you also have to draw the additional card the turn you draw it, which again makes for quite engaging gameplay. I thought. I was just trying to think of if there's any modular set side schemes that I thought were interesting. I guess the print and play Creed Fanatic one is kind of interesting because it kind of replaces the need to find overkill for Red Skull, because one of the ways you can kind of stay on pace with Red Skull is that you just block with allies as you try to trade up your damage and just stay in hero form so that the accumulation of threat on the main scheme isn't as high. The other one I thought that was interesting was under attack, just because it puts pressure on you to either basically make a crisis icon that's not going to go away or deal damage to yourself, which can be dangerous against Red Skull. Do you have any experience with that particular modular set in this scenario?
I believe I tried it, but I didn't. It didn't end up feeling super impactful. Something that I'm thinking of just now, the bomb scare scenario, not scenario, modular set. This is the only situation I can think of where you could actually have, besides multiplayer, occasional really unlucky multiplayer turns, you could actually have bomb scare go off. The explosion go off in a solo game by flipping it from the side scheme deck, and then your encounter card just happened to be explosion.
Yeah, my face if that happened would be the same as the guy on the art for bomb scare, just the mouth agape and shocked as to what is taking place. Bomb scare is a good one though because it's thematic. Because the flavor text on the card is that it says reports are out that Hydra agents have planted a bomb in a nearby hotel. So maybe while you're trying to take down the Red House in the hotel nearby, some rogue Hydra agents, put a bomb down and you get sidetracked trying to.
Oh, maybe they just bombed the lawn of the Red House. Got to keep you out somehow.
Yeah, that's definitely the way. But yeah, I think Red Skull overall is a great scenario. I think we wouldn't be without just showcasing that if you haven't played Red Skull, we recommend you give it a try. There are a ton of gameplay videos on YouTube by various content creators. But really, there's nothing that compares to sitting down and playing through the entire sort of campaign that's provided in the Rise of Red Skull box or product. And yeah, I guess just before we go this week, we should probably just wrap up and just give our thoughts on what we thought of the overall box and product. Joey, do you have any final thoughts to say that you haven't covered in the previous 4 episodes?
The only thing I can think of is that the campaign overall, while it does seem to make Red Skull a bit easier, there's very little mechanics that are being added from the campaign at the moment. I feel like this isn't the best use of the campaign, even if it is enjoyable. And from what I'm more excited to see what we'll be doing going forward, because there's so many things you could do with it that I don't think you could do with a first campaign. You need to start it off easy so that people can get used to the idea, but also B, just they haven't done yet. That there's so many things that you could do that could make for a very enjoyable experience that we don't currently. Red Skull is an enjoyable experience as a campaign, but it's just it's a loose campaign. There's thematic ties, but there's not a lot of mechanical ties if you going on in this particular campaign.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, but I think these sort of ideas and concepts have to start somewhere. And I think this is just a really easy product to direct players towards. So if you haven't played The Rise of Red Skull, I recommend picking it up. For most of you that listen, you've probably already picked it up and played it a bunch, but it definitely injected a healthy amount of content into the game, particularly on the scenario side. And, combined with Kang, I actually think we got a rather good amount of content to work through over, a 3 or 4 month period. And yeah, in 3 or 4 months' time, I guess we'll, look forward to seeing what the Galaxy's Most Wanted box has to offer. We recorded this just after the news article dropped, and we're already really excited to see what the next experience can bring. And it already looks to differentiate itself quite a lot from this one. But yeah, myself at Alter Egos highly recommend this product, and I probably will try and get some games with it later this week because I'm realizing that I haven't played Zola in a little while, and I always enjoy that scenario. So thanks for listening, and Joey, if you want to sign us off, that'd be great.
Okay. We'll see you next time.
Got him. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.